The scary research vessel Eternal Seeker drifted silently through the debris field of what had once been a mining outpost in the Omega Centauri cluster. Chief Researcher Valon's sensory tendrils quivered as she studied the wreckage through the ship's advanced scanning systems. This was the third such destruction it encountered in the past solar cycle, each bearing the same mysterious signature. Analysis complete, Chief, her second-in-command announced, his bioluminescent patches pulsing with anxiety. The pattern matches the previous sites. Whatever did this wasn't interested in the minerals. They were studying the defenses. Valon's inner eyes closed in contemplation. The Galactic Concordat had dismissed her initial reports as paranoia, but she knew better. Something methodical was probing the outer territories, learning, adapting. Her outer membrane rippled with unease as she recalled the ancient warnings about apex predators. The ship's emergency beacon suddenly flared to life. A massive energy signature had appeared from seemingly nowhere, dropping out of what their sensors identified as a crude but effective form of faster-than-light travel. The vessel that emerged was unlike anything in the Concordat's database, all sharp angles and exposed heat radiators, more resembling a primitive projectile weapon than a spacecraft. Unknown vessel, this is the GCS Eternal Seeker. Please identify. Valon's diplomatic greeting was cut short as their ship systems began shutting down one by one. Not through any apparent attack, but through what appeared to be precise electromagnetic pulses that somehow bypassed their shielding. Impossible, her science officer whispered. They're using our own scan data against us. The debris field analysis. They let us do the work for them. The alien ship drew closer and Valon felt a chill run through her body as she realized the truth. They hadn't just been studying the wreckage. They'd been waiting, watching, learning how this Cathari would investigate. Their entire research mission had been the bait. The ship's communication system crackled to life, and a message came through in perfect galactic standard. Zkthari vessel, this is Captain Sarah Chen of the Earth explorer ship Prometheus. Your defensive capabilities have been temporarily disabled. We mean you no harm, but we need information. You've been investigating the attacks on the mining outposts. So have we. We believe we're hunting the same prey. Valon's scientific curiosity briefly overcame her fear. Earth. You're human. The implication struck her like a gravitational wave. The supposedly primitive species from the quarantine system had not only achieved faster-than-light travel, but had managed to reverse engineer Concordat technology just from studying debris. Correct, the human captain replied. We've been following the same trail of destruction for months. These attacks aren't random. They're tests, probing for weaknesses. We recognize the pattern because it's how we used to hunt on our homeworld. The predator studies its prey, learns its habits, and strikes when it understands its target completely. The next few hours were a revelation for Valon and her crew. The humans shared their analysis, showing patterns that the Cathari's sophisticated algorithms had missed. Where the Concordat's best minds saw random violence, the humans saw a methodical hunting strategy. They had tracked the attackers not through advanced technology, but through an almost instinctive understanding of predatory behavior. Your species, Valon ventured, her scientific protocols forgotten in the face of such fascinating data. You evolved as pursuit predators, didn't you? We did, Captain Chen confirmed. Our ancestors would track prey across vast distances, following them until they collapsed from exhaustion. We learned patience, pattern recognition, and most importantly, we learned that understanding your prey is the key to successful hunting. The implications were staggering. The Concordat had dismissed humans as primitive because they lacked the refined technology of older species. But in doing so, they had missed something crucial. Humans hadn't needed to develop certain technologies because their biology had already solved those problems through evolution. As they collaborated, sharing data and insights, Valon began to understand why her people's sophisticated analysis had failed where human intuition succeeded. The Scytheri, like most concordat species, had evolved as filter feeders before achieving sentience. They understood patterns but not predation. The humans, with their evolutionary history of hunting, could see the intent behind the attacks. "We believe they're building up to something bigger," Captain Chen explained, showing a star chart with the attack patterns highlighted. "These aren't just raids, they're practice runs. Someone or something is preparing for a major assault on Concordat space, and they're using these remote outposts to perfect their tactics." Valon felt her chromatophores pale. The Concordat Council needs to know this, but they'll never accept analysis from an unregistered species, especially one they've quarantined. Captain Chen's response carried a hint of what Valon would later learn to recognize as a uniquely human expression, a predator's smile. "That's why we arranged this meeting. Chief Researcher, your species is respected in the Concordat, and you have something we lack: official standing. We have something you lack: the ability to understand what we're truly hunting. We're proposing a partnership." As Valon looked at the human captain through her ship's viewers, she realized she was witnessing a pivotal moment in galactic history. Humans hadn't just escaped their quarantine. They had been using it as camouflage, studying the galaxy's civilizations just as their ancestors had once studied prey. And now they were offering to use those same skills to protect the very societies that had tried to contain them. The choice was clear. Valon could report this contact and maintain the quarantine, or she could accept the humans' offer and potentially save countless lives. In the end, her decision was influenced by a simple observation. In all their demonstration of superior tactical capability, the humans hadn't once actually threatened her crew. Like true apex predators, they didn't need to bare their teeth to prove their power. "Captain Chen," Valon announced, her chromatophores shifting to the formal patterns of diplomatic discourse, "I believe we have much to discuss about the future security of the galaxy." The Concordat's Joint Research Station Nexus 7 hung in high orbit above the gas giant Helios, its crystalline spires reflecting the planet's aurora in waves of shimmering light. Inside the station's main laboratory, Dr. Elena Santos found herself once again explaining human intuition to a room full of bewildered alien scientists. "You're saying you just knew?" Senior researcher Katal's compound eyes flickered in patterns of disbelief. "Without running the simulations, without probability matrices." Elena suppressed a smile as she looked at the holographic display showing the intercepted raid patterns they'd been studying. After the events with the Eternal Seeker 3 months ago, the Concordat had reluctantly agreed to allow a small human scientific contingent to assist with tracking the mysterious attackers. What they hadn't expected was how differently human minds approached problem-solving. "It's not about knowing," Elena explained, manipulating the hologram with practiced ease. "It's about recognizing patterns that feel familiar. Our brains evolved to spot subtle details that might mean the difference between catching prey and going hungry. We don't always know why something looks wrong. We just know it does." The laboratory's third occupant, a meridian named Soph, whose crystalline body structure housed one of the most advanced computational minds in the galaxy, shifted forward. "But your neural architecture is so primitive compared to our engineered systems. Our probability engines can process millions of variables simultaneously." "True," Elena acknowledged, "but they process exactly what they're programmed to process. Human minds make connections between seemingly unrelated things. We call it intuition, but it's really just our brains recognizing patterns we're not consciously aware of yet." As if to prove her point, the station's alerts suddenly blared to life. The holographic display flickered, showing a massive energy surge approaching from the planet's magnetic field. Elena's eyes narrowed as she studied the readings. "Something's wrong," she said, her hunter's instincts screaming. "This isn't a natural phenomenon." Kittle's appendages flew over the control surfaces. "All readings are within expected parameters. The station's AI shows no cause for." The lights went out. In the emergency lighting that followed, Elena's mind was already racing through possibilities. The attack pattern was familiar, but not from their recent investigations. It reminded her of something else, something from Earth's history. "They're using the planet's magnetic field to hide their approach," she announced, already moving toward the emergency controls. "It's like how ancient naval submarines would hide in thermal layers in Earth's oceans. The magnetic interference isn't natural. It's camouflage." Soph's crystalline form pulsed with skepticism. "Impossible. Our sensors would have detected any artificial manipulation off." "Your sensors are looking for what they expect to find," Elena interrupted, her fingers dancing over the emergency console. "Just like prey animals only watch for predators they know. But the best hunters use techniques their prey has never seen before." She accessed the station's most basic systems, bypassing the sophisticated AI that managed them. "Catal, I need you to redirect all power to the old electromagnetic sensors, the analog ones used for maintenance. Those are barely functional," Catal protested. "They're backup systems from the station's original construction." "Exactly," Elena said. "Sometimes older, simpler technology sees what newer systems miss. Like how human eyes can spot movement that advanced cameras might filter out as noise." As the primitive sensors came online, they revealed what the station's advanced systems had missed. 3 ships, using the planet's magnetic field to mask their energy signatures. They were already inside the station's defensive perimeter. "How did you know?" Soph asked, their crystalline structure vibrating with a mixture of fear and fascination. "I didn't know," Elena explained, already sending out an encrypted warning to the human vessels she knew were waiting in the system. "I recognized. Humans spent millennia both hunting and being hunted. We learned that the most dangerous predator is the one you don't know to look for." The next few hours proved Elena right. The attackers, believing they had completely disabled the station, were unprepared for the primitive countermeasures she implemented. They had expected to encounter only the advanced technology they had learned to defeat. Instead, they found themselves facing defenses guided by human instinct and operated through systems too basic to be hacked. When Captain Chen's task force arrived, they found the attacking ships trapped in a web of electromagnetic fields generated by the station's maintenance systems, fields that Elena had repurposed into a hunting net of sorts. The sophistication of the trap lay not in its technology, but in its fundamental understanding of predator and prey behavior. Later, as the Concordet's emergency response team swarmed the station, Catal approached Elena with a new respect in their compound eyes. "Your species' neural architecture. We've been studying it wrong, haven't we? We kept looking for signs of advancement, for evidence of evolutionary refinement." Elena nodded, understanding where this was going. "But what you found looked primitive compared to your engineered improvements. Yet your primitive brains can make connections our most advanced systems miss." Soph added, their crystalline form shifting in patterns that indicated deep thought. Perhaps that is the true advancement. Humans never evolved perfect memory or lightning-fast calculations," Elena explained, watching the captured ships being towed away. "We evolved something different. The ability to see patterns in chaos, to make intuitive leaps, to think in ways that can't be predicted by logic alone. In nature, the most successful predators aren't always the strongest or the fastest. They're the ones that can adapt, that can think differently than their prey expects." As she spoke, Elena could see the implications of her words sinking in. The Concordat had dismissed humanity as primitive because they measured advancement by their own standards. They had failed to recognize that human consciousness itself was a kind of technology, one shaped by millions of years of evolution as both predator and prey. The neural advantage that humans possessed wasn't about processing power or speed. It was about unpredictability, creativity, and the ability to make connections that more advanced minds might never consider. In a galaxy of engineered perfection, the human mind's apparent primitiveness was, ironically, its greatest strength. Commander Jack Morrison stood at the bridge of the EES Hyperion, studying the tactical display with the intensity of a hawk tracking its prey. Beside him, His Githry counterpart, war leader Zax, shifted uncomfortably on his gravitational suspension pad. The Joint Human Concordat Task Force had been tracking the mysterious raiders for weeks, following a trail of destruction that led to this remote sector of space. "Your strategy makes no sense, Commander," Zax's translator conveyed, his crystalline body structure vibrating with frustration. "We have superior numbers and firepower. Why do we not simply attack their position directly?" Morrison's weathered face creased in a slight smile. "Because that's exactly what they expect us to do. Tell me, war leader, have you ever heard of the art of hunting on Earth?" "I fail to see the relevance." "When our ancestors hunted large prey," Morrison continued, his eyes never leaving the display, "they didn't always go for the kill immediately. Sometimes they would wound the prey first, then follow it. The wounded animal would seek familiar territory, leading the hunters right to its home, and often to the rest of its herd." Understanding flickered across Zax's crystalline surface. The raiders they'd engaged last week hadn't escaped. They'd been allowed to flee, thinking they'd outsmarted the task force. In reality, they were being followed, their desperate flight home revealing the location of their main base. "Contact," Lieutenant Rodriguez announced from her station. "Multiple signatures emerging from the asteroid field. Energy patterns match our targets." Morrison nodded, unsurprised. "They're not just raiders," he said quietly. "They're testing our defenses, probing for weaknesses. Every attack has been carefully planned, each retreat calculated. They're hunting us just as much as we're hunting them." Zax's crystalline form pulsed with alarm. "You mean?" "They're like us," Morrison confirmed. "Predators. But they've forgotten something important about predator species." He turned to face his alien counterpart. "We don't just hunt, we also protect our own." The next hour demonstrated why humans had earned their reputation as the galaxy's ultimate predators. Morrison's strategy unfolded like a masterfully laid trap. The task force ships moved in patterns that seemed chaotic to their Concordat allies, but made perfect sense to the human crews. They weren't just fighting, they were hunting as a pack. "Look at their formation," Morrison explained as they watched the raiders attempt to counter their movements. "They're protecting something in that asteroid field, something important enough to risk engagement with superior forces." The raiders fought with desperate ferocity, but they were up against something they'd never encountered before: human tactical instincts combined with Concordat technology. Where the raiders expected the task force to rely on superior firepower, they instead found themselves facing strategies honed by millions of years of evolution. "Now," Morrison commanded, and the trap closed. The seemingly random movements of the task force ships had actually been herding the raiders into a carefully prepared kill box. But rather than destroying them outright, the human-led forces disabled their engines and weapons with surgical precision. "Why do you not finish them?" Zax asked, genuinely curious. "They are clearly hostile elements." Morrison's expression was grim but determined. "Because there's a difference between being a predator and being a monster. On Earth, the most successful predator species weren't just the ones that could kill effectively. They were the ones that knew when not to kill." As their boarding teams secured the raider vessels, they discovered the truth. The raiders weren't just pirates. They were advanced scouts for a previously unknown species that had been systematically studying and testing the Concordat's defenses. In their arrogance, they had dismissed humans as primitive, just as the Concordat initially had. That mistake had cost them their anonymity. The captives were surprised to find themselves treated with strict but humane protocols. Morrison personally oversaw their detention, ensuring they were properly cared for while being thoroughly interrogated. This, too, was part of humanity's predatory heritage, the understanding that unnecessary cruelty was not a sign of strength but of weakness. "Your species continues to confound expectations, Commander," Zax observed as they processed the prisoners. "You possess the instincts of apex predators, yet you choose to use them defensively. You have the capacity for great violence, yet you exercise remarkable restraint." Morrison's response was thoughtful. The strongest predators in nature aren't just the ones that can kill most effectively. They're the ones that maintain balance in their ecosystem. Humans learned long ago that being apex predators came with responsibility. We don't just have the power to hunt. We have the duty to protect. The joint operation had revealed something crucial about humanity's role in the galaxy. Their predatory nature, which had initially caused alarm among concordat species, was proving to be an essential component of galactic security. Humans didn't just hunt threats, they understood them, contained them, and when possible, reformed them. As the task force prepared to escort their prisoners back to concordat space, Morrison reflected on the irony of their situation. Humanity had evolved as pursuit predators, yet here they were, using those same instincts not to destroy, but to safeguard. Their warrior's code had evolved from one of simple hunting to one of protection, turning humanity's predatory nature into a shield for those who couldn't protect themselves. Dr. Maya Patel stood before the Concordat Emergency Council, her holographic presentation showing the cascade of stellar anomalies spreading across 3 sectors. The chamber, usually filled with the subtle sounds of various alien species' biological processes, was eerily silent. The quantum ripple is expanding exponentially, she explained, her voice steady despite the gravity of the situation. The Raiders' experimental drive technology didn't just malfunction. It created a tear in spacetime that's growing. At its current rate, it will destabilize major travel routes within weeks, potentially cutting off entire civilizations from the galactic community. The council chamber erupted in a cacophony of translated voices. The Meridian representative's crystalline form vibrated with alarm patterns. Our best scientific models show no solution. The energy required to contain such a breach would exceed our combined fleet's capacity. Maya smiled, a gesture that still unnerved some council members who weren't used to human facial expressions. That's because you're thinking like engineers, not hunters. You're looking for a technological solution to overwhelm the problem with force. But sometimes, the smallest predator can bring down the largest prey by striking at the right point. She manipulated the holographic display, zooming in on the quantum ripple structure. Look at the pattern of the anomaly. It's not just expanding randomly. It's following the path of least resistance, like water flowing downhill or prey animals following familiar trails. The Scatheri representative's sensory tendrils quivered. Fascinating analogy, Dr. Patel, but how does this help us contain the breach? We don't contain it, Maya said, her eyes gleaming with the intensity that her colleagues had learned to recognize as the human predatory instinct, expressing itself through scientific insight. We guide it. Like our ancestors who would drive herds of prey animals into natural traps, we can use the existing quantum currents of space to direct the ripple where we want it to go. The display shifted, showing a complex network of gravitational fields and quantum eddies that most species sensors ignored as background noise. Humans, with their evolved ability to recognize subtle patterns, had been the first to notice how these currents affected faster than light travel. Here, she pointed to a particular intersection of quantum currents. If we generate a specific frequency of gravitational waves at these points, we can create a path of least resistance that will draw the ripple into this region of dead space. Once there, the natural gravitational forces will cause it to collapse in on itself. The council members studied the proposal with various sensing organs. The Meridian representative spoke first, their crystalline surface refracting light in patterns of skepticism. The precision required, even a slight miscalculation, could accelerate the disaster. That's why we'll need both human intuition and concordat technology, Maya explained. Your gravitational generators are far more advanced than ours, but our brains are better at recognizing and predicting complex patterns in real time. Like how our ancestors could predict where prey would run by observing subtle signs in the environment. The next 48 hours saw an unprecedented collaboration between human and alien scientists. Maya coordinated from the lead research vessel, her mind processing the quantum ripples movements, the way her ancestors would have tracked herds across ancient savannas. The Concordat's advanced technology provided the tools, but it was human pattern recognition that guided their use. The ripples changing direction, one of the Meridian scientists announced, their crystalline form pulsing with alarm frequencies. The gravitational currents aren't strong enough to. They are, Maya interrupted, her eyes fixed on a holographic display. Watch the eddy patterns. The ripple isn't fighting our influence. It's testing it, like prey testing a predator's defenses. We need to be patient, let it think it's found a weakness, then guide it right where we want it to go. Admiral Sarah Chen stood at the observation deck of Concordat Central Station, watching ships from 100 different species weave through the star-filled void. 10 years had passed since that first encounter with the Eternal Seeker, and humanity's role in the galaxy had evolved in ways no one could have predicted. Quite a view, isn't it? The voice belonged to Dr. Valon, now serving as the Concordat's chief of Sinological Studies. The scary researcher's chromatophores shifted in patterns of friendly recognition as she approached. Hard to believe there was a time when the sight of a human ship would cause panic in Concordat space, Sarah replied, smiling at her old friend. Below them, an Earth vessel was conducting joint maneuvers with ships from 5 different species, their movements perfectly coordinated. The irony isn't lost on me, Valon said, her sensory tendrils moving in what Sarah had learned was amusement. We feared your predatory nature would make you dangerous to galactic civilization. Instead, it made you its perfect guardians. The evidence of that transformation was visible throughout Concordat space. Human pattern recognition had revolutionized everything from space traffic control to quantum physics. Their intuitive understanding of predator-prey dynamics had led to breakthroughs in protecting trading routes and predicting criminal behavior. The latest reports from the rim worlds are encouraging. Valon continued. The joint patrol systems you designed have reduced piracy by 87%. It turns out that having a predator species on guard duty is quite effective. Sarah nodded, remembering the early days when humans had first proposed the concept. We understood something that the Concordat had missed. In nature, the presence of apex predators doesn't just control dangerous elements. It creates stability. A healthy ecosystem needs its hunters. Below them, a massive transport ship was being escorted by smaller human vessels. The formation wasn't random. It mimicked patterns that wolf packs had used to protect their young millions of years ago on Earth. The same instincts that had once helped humans hunt now helped them safeguard galactic commerce. Your Captain Morrison's training programs have transformed our defense forces, Valon observed, teaching other species to think like predators while maintaining ethical constraints. It's created a new paradigm for galactic security. We had to evolve too, Sarah acknowledged. Humans had to learn to balance our predatory instincts with wisdom. Being the galaxy's apex predators means having the strength to protect, not just the power to destroy. Their conversation was interrupted by a priority alert. A quantum anomaly had been detected in a nearby sector, similar to but smaller than the one Dr. Patel had helped resolve years ago. Sarah watched with pride as human and alien ships moved in perfect coordination to address the threat, using techniques that combined the best of both cultures. You know what amazes me most about humans? Valon asked, her chromatophores shifting to patterns of deep contemplation. It's not your physical capabilities or even your intuitive understanding of predator-prey dynamics. It's your capacity for growth. You took traits that could have made you the galaxy's greatest threat and transformed them into tools for its preservation. Sarah thought about the long journey that had brought humanity to this point. Maybe that's the true mark of an apex predator, not just the ability to hunt, but the wisdom to know when to protect instead. Our ancestors didn't just learn how to track prey. They learned how to guard their territory, how to maintain balance in their environment. The alert was resolved quickly, the combined fleet working with an efficiency that would have seemed impossible a decade ago. Human hunting instincts, augmented by alien technology and tempered by ethical principles, had created something entirely new in galactic history. We're receiving requests from more species to join the joint training programs, Vylon mentioned. Even the Meridians, who once considered human neural architecture primitive, are studying how to incorporate predatory pattern recognition into their crystalline matrices. Evolution never stops, Sarah said, watching as ships from dozens of worlds moved through their intricate dance. Humans evolved from prey to predator to protector. Now we're helping the galaxy evolve too, teaching other species that strength isn't just about power. It's about understanding, adaptation, and responsibility. A group of young alien cadets passed by, led by a human instructor. They were learning tracking techniques developed by ancient human hunters, now adapted for monitoring quantum space disturbances. The sight embodied everything humanity had become: teachers, guardians, guides for a galaxy that had initially feared them. The Council is considering making Earth the primary training center for the Concordet's security forces, Vylon revealed. They believe exposure to your planet's predator-prey dynamics will help other species understand the principles better. Sarah nodded, watching as another Earth ship began its patrol route. That's the thing about evolution, she said. It's not just about survival of the fittest. It's about finding your place in the greater ecosystem. Humans didn't become the galaxy's apex predators by conquering it. We did it by choosing to protect it instead. Sarah laughed softly. From quarantine threat to galactic training ground, evolution works in mysterious ways. As they watched the endless dance of ships against the star-filled backdrop, both human and alien contemplated the strange path that had brought them here. Humanity had entered the galactic stage as feared predators, only to become its most dedicated protectors. Their hunting heritage, once seen as a mark of primitiveness, had proved to be exactly what the galaxy needed. Perhaps, Vylon mused, this is what evolution has been working toward all along. Not the elimination of predatory instincts, but their refinement into something greater. You humans haven't just adapted to the galaxy, you've helped it adapt to you. Sarah nodded, watching as another Earth ship began its patrol route. That's the thing about evolution, she said. It's not just about survival of the fittest. It's about finding your place in the greater ecosystem. Humans didn't become the galaxy's apex predators by conquering it. We did it by choosing to protect it instead.